Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and maybe evening. Good evening. Welcome at this modern endpoint management summit. It's great to see many of you joining this awesome session. Please note that we made sure that all of the microphones are muted during the presentation. Please use the chat. Say hello to everyone, or maybe not. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. We will do our best as quickly as possible. If you are looking for the PowerPoint slides, you can download them after the live sessions. A little heads up, the session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, you are of course free to leave. And please welcome Thomas. And Thomas, please tell us more about Windows Update for Business.
Thank you, Rudy. I will. But
Thanks.
First of all, a small thanks to our sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't be able to have such a great setup. So please all remember to visit the exhibit hall and to see all the great stuff from our sponsors. My name is Thomas Marcussen. I'm a technology architect. I work as a consultant on a day-to-day basis. I'm a Microsoft MVP, a Microsoft certified trainer, and an official contributor in the modern endpoint management group. I've been working with client management for the past 20 years, always with a focus on Windows client and device management. I've been working with Windows Server Update services since the release of version 2.0. It was released back in 2005, so it's quite a few years ago. And luckily for us, a lot has changed since then. Of course, to the better in regards of managing Windows updates. If you have any questions, I would like to reach out after the session. You can do so on Twitter or LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I do try to blog on a regular basis. So if you have any topic suggestions or things you would like elaborated on, just let me know. Input is always appreciated. You will leave the session with a basic understanding of Windows Update for Business and how to get started with it, should you want to implement it into your organization. On my blog, I have several articles describing much more than we can cover today, also addressing multiple scenarios. So if you are interested in Windows Update for Business and some use cases, do check them out. So let's talk a bit about Windows updates in general. Windows updates are one of the key responsibilities of system administrators. Most of them include security updates, and we all know that security issues are amongst the worst possible errors, as they may be exploited by malware or hackers. These types of situations are regularly identified in various parts of Windows, like the .NET Framework, Edge, ActiveX. You probably know a lot more applications affected by that. Other updates addresses other bugs and issues in Windows. Even though they are not responsible for security vulnerabilities directly, they might impact the stability of the operating system or simply lead to annoying issues. I guess we've all been there at some point where bugs or vulnerabilities led to issues. Last but not least, Windows updates sometimes come with new features while patching some known issues. So that said, it's very important to keep your systems up to date to achieve the maximum stability and performance. So over the last few years, we've seen a shift in how we work, and work from anywhere has become the new normal. We need to be able to support and evolve around that and provide our users with a great experience while maintaining management and security. To secure your devices by keeping them up to date is one of the things that's become much easier to do with Windows Update for Business. As you may know, Windows Update for Business requires no on-premise infrastructure and can be accessed from internet-connected Windows devices. So whether you're on the road, in the airport, working from home, or in the office, you'll be able to receive updates from Windows Update for Business. From my point of view, this is one of the awesome features of Windows Update for Business. So where are we coming from? Most of you are already familiar with Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, as you might know it as well. The concept of managing software updates that you implement where you implement a software update point on top of your WSUS server. The WSUS server becomes a part of your config manager hierarchy, and from that point forward, we can manage them from the config manager console. I know many of you probably are doing that today, and you will be able to shift into the Windows Update for Business quite easily. I'll get back to that part in a bit. Not that I'll go into all the details about the software update point, but it does serve a purpose to shortly describe the complexity of such environment. When you set up a software update point to manage your WSUS updates, updates through WSUS, the first thing that happens is that it downloads a subset of the catalog from Windows Update based on the selection made by you and the administrator. This is data that is stored locally on your on-premise server. Config Manager clients then instruct Windows Update agents to scan against the catalog hosted on the software update point and report back if they need software update listed in the catalog. Based on the inventory information, based on this inventory information, the administrator can then decide to deploy the necessary updates to the clients reporting that you need the patches. This can be accomplished by creating software update groups, which contains a set of software updates where the administrator can define when and how these software updates should be applied. The software update in the software update point can be downloaded and distributed to your distribution point as a package and by deploying the software update group to a collection. The clients receive a policy to download and install the patches. This process can, of course, be automated by automatic deployment rules that runs based on your configured requirements. The success here you can accomplish with this process depends on a lot of factors, like config manager client health, config manager device hygiene, and the Windows Update agent on the client, and more components which are fully aligned with each other. And this is where Windows Update for Business adds a lot of value. It runs much more smoothly. And from my point of view and my experience, it's much more robust, especially if you remember issues with the Windows Update agent version. A client device today isn't necessarily on the local network of the company managing the device. Companies have had to implement alternatives to keep managing those devices, like setting up VPN connection, or by extending Config Manager by using the more recently introduced Cloud Management Gateway functionality. While implementing this functionality makes the Config Manager able to service your devices, downloading the software updates directly from Windows Update, either under the supervision from the Config Manager infrastructure, or by moving the functionality provided by Config Manager to the Windows Update for Business service. Windows Update for Business enables IT administrators to keep the Windows devices in the organization always up to date with the latest security and Windows features by directly connecting these systems to the Windows Update service. The behavior of these clients can be governed using group policy objects or by using mobile device management solutions like Endpoint Manager or Intune. When using Windows Update for Business in a local network, it's advised to use and configure peer-to-peer technologies to optimize the necessary bandwidth. Ideally, in the case, one client downloads the software update, shares the data with other clients on the same network, and I'll get back to that part in a bit. This is where if you have a cloud management gateway and an on-premise configuration manager infrastructure, data would have been downloaded and distributed from the distribution points. Microsoft changed the way they named the functionality. Along the way, they also modified how updates are delivered by optimizing the necessary download sizes and reducing the amount of software updates. Today, we're talking about quality updates which are released on a monthly basis and contains fixes and security updates. And we have feature updates which are released twice a year, updating to a new Windows 10 version. We used to have servicing stack updates. I know a lot of you have been struggling with service stack updates. And that's updates to the Windows Update mechanism itself, which caused some issues because of quality updates were depending on them. But now these servicing stack updates have been integrated into the quality updates installation as well, removing the dependency on each other. This doesn't necessarily mean that if you have legacy clients still running an on-premise WSUS infrastructure, they will sort themselves out. They will not. But if you were to switch to a Windows Update for Business environment, you would see that they would resolve the issues themselves. This new way of managing software update with Windows Update for Business, which Microsoft refers to as Windows as a Service, requires administrators to unlearn what they have been doing for a long time, and requires them to rethink and relearn the concepts and understanding the ways of how to handle things in today's world. There are different types of updates. Let's take a look at those. Feature updates are released semi-annually, normally during spring and fall. These updates containing significant changes and bring more features to the operating system. Feature updates are relatively large and can have a big impact. In fact, this is where we see a lot of, not struggling, but it can be a bit tiresome, and give some issues for the clients. Quality updates. These type of updates containing patches, bug fixes, drivers, and small adjustments. As usual, these types of updates are delivered on Patch Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month. However, Microsoft also releases so-called C and D releases, usually delivered in the third or fourth week of the month. These types of updates can be delivered anytime to patch vulnerabilities or risks. So it's not only on Patch Tuesday we do see patches. These updates are cumulative updates, meaning that all updates that have been released earlier will be superseded by the next one. So we don't have older updates that we need to apply in form of quality updates before we can apply the next one. It will always be superseded by the latest and greatest version. Driver updates. These type of updates contains non-Microsoft drivers. In some cases, you may want to turn this feature off, but it really does help it to keep up to date with the latest drivers and potentially increasing performance and stability on your Windows clients. I know in a controlled config manager environment, there are multiple other ways to do this, but it does also serve a purpose when you create your driver packages, you create one and you leave the driver package working and do not intend to update it. There are multiple ways of updating drivers today. Windows Update for Business is just one of them. You will be able to certify a driver model for OSD and let it install, run up, and update using Windows Update for Business at a later point and get an ongoing increase in the drivers already installed. For other Microsoft products, such as Office and related applications, there is a separate category for that, but also supported by Windows Update for Business. The channels are divided as follows. Windows Insider Fast. The fast ring pushes updates that are tested by Microsoft. However, these updates can contain bugs as they are not tested broadly. Devices using the Insider ring. The Insider Fast ring could somehow be unstable. This channel is meant to collect feedback from the field or to test against your applications on beforehand. Updates are usually pushed twice a week, once or twice a week, that is. So it's a good way of getting a first look, hands and feel with the patches to see what's coming. If you do a test environment or would like to get a head start on what's coming. The Windows Insider Slow. When the first feedback is collected and processed, updates are pushed to this ring. This channel gets more stable updates, but can still contain bugs, which can make the device unstable. Updates are pushed once a month. Updates in the channel, the Windows Insider Release Preview, updates in this channel are almost ready for broadly rollout. You can choose this ring to test out new features, but also work on stable devices. Semi-annual channel, when updates are thoroughly tested, they are being released through the public channel. However, sometimes an update is pulled back after release because of a major issue. To be one step ahead of this, you can set the deferral period for this channel. Quality updates can be deferred up to 30 days. Feature updates deferred up to 365 days. The deferral period is calculated from the day the update is launched. So the update rings. By creating these different rings, you can roll out updates more gradually in your organization. For example, you can select a subset of users and assign them to an insider ring. In that case, if something goes wrong, you can fix this before it reaches the broader rings. So it's a so-called early adopters ring, basically. And it's a good way to catch the first problems, because the problems you might experience might not be experienced broadly. It could be due to specific applications in your environment, specific configurations, or other things. So it's always a good idea to select a varied set of users so you can test most of your applications. This way you can thoroughly test an update before it hits the broader rings. And that's what I've tried to illustrate with the ring set updates here. Let me try to show the update rings. You should be able to see the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center here. If I go to Dashboard, Devices, Update rings for Windows 10 and later, I'll be able to create a new profile. We can call this one Windows 10 Update ring 0. The update settings here, where we can decide whether or not to scan for updates for Microsoft Updates. Of course, we would allow that for the ring 0. It could be for any other ring. You'll be able to create each ring in the same way, in the same flow, within the Endpoint Manager Admin Center. So it's pretty easy to assign different rings to different devices. Do we want to allow for drivers or block those from Microsoft Update? It depends, really. If you run a tight, closed environment, very controlled, and you do update drivers manually, you could potentially block this. But most I've come across doesn't really update drivers once the hardware reaches the users. So it's a very, very good way to keep your drivers up to date as well. Quality updates. Again, the defer period is up to 30 days. It can be specified in the amount of days. Feature updates deferral period, also defined in days, up to 365 days. Just for the purpose of an example here. Do you want to upgrade Windows 10 devices to the latest Windows 11 release? No, probably not with the ring 0. We would probably have a separate ring for that. If you want to set the feature update install period, you can do so here. The feature uninstall period, it does fill up a bit of space on the device. You will see a windows.old folder. It will store all the needed configurations, files, etc., to do a rollback. So you shouldn't keep those for all that long, but let's say you can keep them for 10 days, whatever fits your environments. It's up to you and up to the device page, the device storage and the devices. Generally keep them low as possible, but also give them a possibility, especially for ring 0 or some of the early adopter rings, so they will be able to do a rollback. In pre-release builds, that's basically up to you how you run your rings. and depending on what ring type you were to set up. For pre-release builds, we are probably in a ring 0 or something like testers in that, and not a broadly set up environment. As for the behavior, the update behavior, it's pretty easily to configure it here. You could choose notify download. The user will be notified that update has been downloaded, and they could start the installation themselves. You could do an auto install at maintenance time. You could do auto install and restart at maintenance times, auto install and restart at scheduled time, auto install and reboot without end user control. And it's basically, it depends on your environment and what user experience you allow your users to have. If I can get away with it, I would do an auto install and restart at maintenance time. We have the possibility to set active hours, so we don't disturb the users within the active hours. So it's pretty easy to set up. And again, if we leave it up to the users to do, let's say, install themselves, I guess we all know that they will never have time, and they usually most of the time users will not install them by themselves. So it's a good idea to at least have an auto install set. You could also set a deadline, but again, many users would probably just reach the deadline in any case and wait for them to apply. You can allow for restart checks. Restart checks includes it's set to skip all check before restart. Battery level is in this part, the user presence, display needed, presentation mode, full screen. So you don't interrupt the users while they are in the middle of a phone call, in a presentation, or any other important stuff. You can choose whether or not to pause Windows updates and allow the users to interact with it. From my point of view, that's a good idea. And there's an option to check Windows Update. And that's the button to check the update service for updates within the OS. There's the notification level. I would usually do turn off all notifications and exclude restart warnings, so they will get a restart warning. I think that's good practical, but again, that depends on your environment. We could set a deadline. So the updates will be offered, but allowed installed on deadlines. 2 to 30 days for feature updates, 2 to 30 days for quality updates, and a grace period from 0 to 7 days. Another awesome feature is reboot before deadline. It can help you increase the success rate and clean out if you have any users that never reboots their device, never shuts it off, or always hibernate. It is a good client hygiene process to have it rebooted once in a while. Not that your Windows Update should be the driver of that. You could implement other solutions to handle such thing, but it is possible here as well. That's all the settings we have for this one. We can assign it to specific groups, to all devices, or whatever we would like to do. It's very, very simple. I'm not going to assign this. In the review and summary, we have the setup we have chosen, whether or not to allow for product updates, Windows drivers, all the settings we already made. If I create this update ring, it will now be ready for deployment. So if I were to target a group now, the updates would be configured, the client would be updated with the settings needed, and we would be able to start the update process and follow the new ring setup. Let me jump back to the slide deck. So as you see, it's pretty simple to configure the update rings. There's no small scripts, there's no tools and tricks needed to configure your update ring. It is pretty straightforward and out of the box. So here's an example of a feature rollout. The setup ring is configured as described earlier, and it is easy to set it up for these specific devices. It could be a lot of devices that you roll out to. In that case, you might have some, so to say, concerns if the rings are too big or too small. But again, Microsoft uses quality and compatibility data to identify issues that might cause a Windows client feature to fail or rollback. If you open up the Windows Update part on a client computer, and you see this indication here, in this case, the Windows 10 May 2020 update is on its way. Once it's ready for your device, you will see update available on this page a little more. You would be able to see this if an issue is affected. And Microsoft, again, uses quality and compatibility data to stop a feature to roll out if it has a known failure or if it's not compatible. If an issue is detected, the safeguard hold is applied. Safeguard hold is applied when a customer, a partner, or a Microsoft internal validation finds an issue that would cause severe impact. For example, a rollback of the update, data loss of connectivity, or loss of key functionality, or when a workaround is not immediately available. The safeguard hold is a great step forward for populating your device update rings with a lot of devices, and an easy way to keep them from falling into known issues, basically. You can, of course, opt out of the safeguard hold if you have another workaround or non-published workaround for your issue, but it's not advised to do so. When you're using Windows Update for Business for your Windows 10 devices, it can be a tremendous impact on your bandwidth usage. Each and every client have to download the updates individually from the Microsoft Update service in order to install them. You could use delivery optimizations. Delivery optimizations allow clients to share updates over the local network using peer-to-peer technology. Administrators can also configure how much bandwidth the devices should use for this task. Delivery optimization can also be used for apps that are downloaded from the Microsoft Store. Downloaded files are stored on the device for a short while and automatically cleaned up afterwards. Delivery optimization is built into Windows 10 and can be easily configured using group policies or Intune or whatever means you have to configure policies. So if you're running a config manager environment, let's see how easy it is to switch the workload. Let me see if I can share my environment here. Yeah, you should be able to see the config manager console here. This is my demo environment. So if I want to get started with Windows Update for Business, and I was running a config manager environment, I would go to administration. This is just one of the ways of getting started with it, by the way. I would configure cloud attach. I'm signed in with the user that has access to the tenant I'm in. When you're doing this, it will register an application in your Azure AD tenant. In this case, my tenant is called Thomas Marcussen, and it will authorize the data synchronization to Intune. When this is done, I'll have an item here. I will click Properties. So we can see the settings, hopefully. This is to enable co-management for the devices managed by Config Manager. We can configure them for automatic enrollment in Intune. We can pilot it and choose a specific group in case we want to do it on a small subset of devices. That's always a good idea when you're starting out with it, but it is quite an easy process, so it rarely gives issues. In regards to the workloads, the workload for Windows Update for Business that we're looking for is the Windows Update policies. If we were to move it to pilot it in Intune, it's as easy as dragging and dropping. And in this case, we're just talking Windows Update policies. We could choose which collection we want to do this for. When you configure a workload for pilot Intune, you'll be able to select which collections of devices that you want to use. I have another console open here. And I did repopulate some collections here. I have one collection defined with a specific workload for Windows Update for Business. It's a pilot group from my test users. There's 22 devices in it. And those are pre-populated. So we have the auto-enrollment set, and we have the workload set for pilot Intune and the staging. So next time the clients update, check for policies, you get the message that they have now shifted their workload to Windows Update for Business, and they will run from there. So you can do all your configurations for Windows Update for Business from there now, and they will be able to be serviced specifically using Windows Update for Business. The process is quite simple, and it gives an easy way to get started with Windows Update for Business. It's an easy way to actually how to say, if you want to pilot and test it for a specific set of users or specific sets of roles in your environment, it is very, very easy. It could be if you want to pilot it for traveling users and stuff like that. It's very easy. I have multiple blogs describing the process and what to look for and what not to do on the blog. So you can always refer to that. Otherwise, feel free to reach out. Let me jump back. We can do some Q&A for any questions. I know there's a question in regards to the granularity of the settings or the configurations, WSUS versus Windows Update for Business. Yes, there is, from my experience, a lot of things you can granulate, specifically configure in Windows Update for Business. But from my point of view and my experience, some of them might not be needed anymore. And it is I would say a new world, that would sound wrong, but some of the settings you might not need to configure anymore. If you have any specific examples of settings you need or think is missing, let me know and I can address those. But I think it's, at least from my point of view and my experiences, that when we get started with Windows Update for Business, especially in larger environments where we have not, let's say, followed up thoroughly with the clients that have been hanging or for some reason not have had updates for quite some time, we see them roll in much faster and in a much more controlled environment, or in a controlled way, that is, with the Windows Update for Business rings. And it really gives a good look. But in regards to the specific configurations, yeah, some might be missing, but I think the most vital ones are there, and you can always granulate which should have them from there or not. Let me see what else we have here. So there's a question here about the Windows Update for Business policies and where to, if you have them under GPO control and Windows Update for Business policy, which takes precedence. Well, the GPO control, at least from a troubleshooting perspective, will give some issues, as the GPO will be applied on a much more frequent interval. So if you have Windows Update for Business policies configured and you have some legacy GPOs, make sure to clean them out. There are reports that can be used to locate those. I will share those with the deck and the links afterwards. How you can manage those as well. There's a question here with is Windows Update for Business still utilizing Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager on premise? It can, but it's not required. You can use it specifically with Intune, and you can use it with Intune only. Not sure if that answers the questions. Otherwise, just let me know. Here's another question here. If you're using Config Manager with CMD, the Cloud Management Gateway for Windows Updates, what's the benefit of moving updates deployment to Windows Update for Business? Well, especially for remote users, it's obviously a good idea. Why not let them pull updates from there? But I do also find that Windows Update for Business is more robust in the way it handles checks and scans for Windows updates that is needed by the OS. An example is the servicing stack updates. If you still have older clients that runs with older versions, not patched to date, you will see that if you add them to a Windows Update for Business ring, they might get updates that's not in your update group because it's an older update, depending on how you hygiene your environment. So again, the main benefit of moving it is, of course, for remote users, it's obviously why not let them get updates from the internet, but also for a more robust environment. So to address one of the questions here, for a larger company that's used to manage updates with on-premise Config Manager and Cloud Management Gateway, what's the biggest risk and challenges to change to Windows Update for Business? Well, from my experience, many, or at least some, tend to take the control you have with the on-premise Config Manager also to slow down the pace and the speed of the deployment of updates. And that actually poses a risk, or at least a challenge, when transitioning to Windows Update for Business, because you will be forced to actually at least follow that pace that it comes in, for better or worse. Basically, it sometimes it's easier to transition if you get started with it, but you do have to follow the pace. And that can be, if you don't have processes for it today, you will have it in the future. As for the questions with Windows drivers update, how old are those drivers? Yeah, well, the drivers is basically, it's up to the vendors to deliver drivers to Microsoft and make them available. So it depends. You can have examples of a driver where you get a device shipped, you set it up maybe with autopilot, and once it comes up, it updates the driver from Windows Update for Business. But if you check the local driver repository at the vendor, you will find an even newer driver, or with the hardware vendor at least. So it's hard to say from my point of view. One of the biggest benefits here is that if you when you set up a device, traditionally you add network drivers, all the drivers needed for OSD, and you set the device up, and you mainly tend to say, yeah, we fixed it. It arrived 1 or 2 years ago. It worked at that point, and we won't touch the drivers again. That it can be hard to retouch the drivers if you don't have the specific model in place. So I can understand why it's hard to re-update the drivers, but Windows Update for Business gives a pretty nice way of updating the drivers. I've seen very few issues with those, and I've seen a lot of good results, especially with drivers, because you don't retouch them necessarily, and you can live with a device that has older drivers set up for OSD, and then add it later on, upgraded with the latest and greatest drivers, or at least the latest drivers available for Windows Update for Business. There is lots of performance and stability changes here, at least from my experience. I guess we are at time's end here and about to close up. Thanks all for participating in the session, and again, do reach out if you have any questions afterwards. We will try to follow up with the Q&As and have them answered separately if needed. Otherwise, yeah, ping me on one of the social medias. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Thomas, for telling us more about the Windows Update for Business. And for everyone else, have a good day, evening, and enjoy your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.